What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. I am joined with my colleague Chuck Bass, and we're going to open up a brand new show. It is going to be Risers and Fallers. We're going to start off with Dynasty for the first few episodes, but as the NFL draft comes and people start getting more into best ball as well as redraft, we'll probably make a shift some point down the line and start to kind of commingle all of it together. But without further ado, let's just kick off our first player. It's going to be Davante Adams. Davante Adams in startups right now is going at pick 100. He is the wide receiver 36 off the board, and he's up 2 spots currently. He's 31 years old, turns 32 at the end of the season. Chuck, at wide receiver 36, a slight movement up. What do you think about Davante Adams right now in startups and where he's currently going?
I think it's frustrating to me how on board everybody is with how awesome he's going to be in LA. And you know what? You can't pick it apart, right? We've seen what he can be with terrible quarterback play, with medium quarterback play, and with elite quarterback play. And you don't have to go back far to find that. Player profiler right now, they actually have him ranked wide receiver 48. So you can kind of see, some people, there's advantages here or there. He's going around guys like Keon Coleman, Jalen McMillan, Michael Pittman, and Christian Watson. To me, that's freaking insane. He's basically like an inverse Tyreek Hill right now, right? Tyreek's value is rising and falling depending on quarterback play and scheme fit and all that. Adams is plug and play, and you're not getting a better plug and play offense than the Sean McVay Rams. He got the most guaranteed money of any wide receiver this summer, so he's a pretty clear part of their Super Bowl window. He's a win now staple of a lineup, and I feel pretty damn great about him going forward.
Yeah, I think with Devonte Adams, and you're going to hear this a lot when we do these shows, but it's all going to be roster dependent when you're doing dynasty startups. And we're going to also talk a little bit about the trades that these guys are being moved in and what we're seeing. But when you look at the LA Rams and you look at the departure of Cooper Cup, who had 100 targets last year in just 12 games. You had Puka Nakua, who had 106 targets in 11 games, right? There are vacated targets to be had here. And I know Puka Nakua is going to get his. We're looking at a guy who, if he's healthy, which he's had some issues staying healthy, if he's healthy, though, he's likely going to be somewhere on that 130 to 145 threshold when it comes to targets with Matt Stafford's inking that new deal. And people will sit here and say, well, are there enough targets to go around for a guy like Davante Adams? But with 100 vacated targets from Cooper Cup, Tutu Atwell had 62 targets last year. Demarcus Robinson had 64. Heck, Tyler Johnson had 41. There will be enough targets to go around, in my opinion, with Davante Adams, who was 17.2 points per game last year. That was good enough for wide receiver 9. And look, I understand the age is a concern. He's going to turn
Mhm.
32 at the end of the season, but I think if you're a contender, I think I'm comfortable with him being, your wide receiver 3 if you can get him, where right now where he's going in startups, he's likely going to be your wide receiver 3 depending on your builds because he's the 36 guy off the board and he's going at pick 100. Is there anything else that you think, with Devonte Adams, anything else you want to kind of add to that?
No, I think that you touched on something that I think people don't need to worry about. I'm even more bullish. I would have him as a comfortable wide receiver 2 in my lineup if you wanted to
Mhm.
go running back heavy, if you wanted to go tight end heavy, depending on the premiums in your league. This Rams team, 3 of the last 4 years, has been top 12 in passing attempts per game, and that's with injuries to Cooper Cup. That's with injuries to Puka Nakua. The only year they weren't is when Stafford was out of the lineup for a pretty significant period of time. So they're getting the band back together from 2021 with Cup, with Odell Beckham, that whole run that was very explosive, very fun. I think they slide him in right there, and I think that this is going to be one more people wish they paid up for when it comes 2025.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a good way to close it out. I think the last thing I would share with Devonte Adams is, look, if you're trying to maybe make a deal for Devonte Adams, some recent deals that I've seen get done is, Devonte Adams for, giving up Calvin Ridley and a mid second.
Mhm.
Possibly do something like that. I've seen guys flip Davante Adams in a late third in 2026 for Hill and a mid 2025. So, there are definitely moves to be made with Davante Adams, but let's jump to our next player. It's going to be Ricky Pearsall of the San Francisco 49ers. This team has had a little bit of transition. Ricky Pearsall is pick 91 right now in startups. He's up one spot. He's going in the eighth round currently, and he's wide receiver 34. He's 24 right now. We know all the issues last year. He, got the gunshot. He came back pretty quickly. He
Mm.
turns 25 in September. Chuck, what are your thoughts on Ricky Pearsall right now and where he's going?
I feel basically the same about him as I did going into last year, as to where this team is in an unbelievably uncertain time. From, we don't know the future of the coach and the GM if this season goes poorly. Debo's off the team. Ayuk is in trade rumors every week. Kittle's getting up there. CMC's never around. Like, we all know that. You go on any podcast, you listen to any sports media, we all know these things. People forget that this 49ers offense, before they had Debo, before they had Ayuk, before they had Kittle, was still crazy explosive. And that was with guys like Marquise Goodwin, Kendrick Bourne, Pierre Garcon, Trent Taylor. They've done this before. So as long as you have a wide receiver one or two for the San Francisco 49ers, you have a strong bargain piece. And then you look at the players that are going around him. I feel terrific about the next 3 to 4 years for Pearsall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of there with you. I think, looking at guys around him, like you have a guy like Tyreek Hill who's going a full round ahead of him. You
Mhm.
even have guys like Jordan Addison who is going almost two full rounds ahead of Ricky Pearsall. If I'm in drafts, I'd much rather, wait on Ricky Pearsall than take a swing on a guy like Jordan Addison, who we know for a fact Jordan Addison's never going to be the wide receiver one in his offense, where Ricky Pearsall, though Brandon Ayuk got the extension, I could see a world where Ricky Pearsall ends up being better than Brandon Ayuk and
Mhm.
becomes the number one receiver in that offense. When you look with the departure of Debo Samuel, who struggled to be healthy last year, but Debo was able to get 81 targets. You had 113 for Jawan Jennings. Pearsall in 11 games had 46 targets. That's pretty solid. And then Brandon Ayuk with the injury had 47 as well. The point is, there are receptions and targets to go around in this offense. And I'm excited to see Ricky Pearsall. He had a strong finish to last season. And honestly, I think the value that you're getting on a guy like that in an offense like this, it's hard to pass up. And I'm willing to take that chance because I really think he should be valued a little bit higher just because of the offense that you're getting him in. But I understand,
Mhm.
right? The Jawan Jennings thing worries people a little bit, where it's like,
Mhm.
is Ricky Pearsall the wide receiver three here, plus George Kittle and his healthy CMC? But I'm willing to bank on that talent for where you're getting him, especially in startups, which,
Mhm.
like we said, right now, he's going to be the pick 91 and he's the wide receiver 34. It's a good value.
Yeah. It really is. And to touch on the Jawan Jennings thing, I think you're looking at a guy that excels as a wide receiver three on a team and will struggle to be that team's wide receiver one or two. And that happened when they had everybody but Ayuk last year. He was incredibly inconsistent. He was pick and pop, and he was really touchdown dependent. They tab their guys and they commit to them and they develop them. They may spend some time in the doghouse every now and then, like Ayuk was famous for, but otherwise, this is a team that really, really nails it with offensive talent. I think they've made a pretty clear commitment by trading Debo that they're ready to build around this core that they have.
Yeah, I actually really like that. That's a really good point, and a good way to close that one out. Our last riser that we're going to talk about is going to be Tyrone Tracey of the New York Giants. He's going at pick 93. He's up three spots, and you're pretty much getting him at the eighth round as well. He's RB 24. He's 25 years old and turns 26 in November. There is a little bit of concern with the age for a guy that's at a position that doesn't generally age well. His second year in the league, he's going to turn 26 halfway through the season. What are your thoughts on Tyrone Tracey, Chuck? Are you buying at this price? Where do you kind of sit with him right now in Dynasty?
He's a guy that he's been holding his breath to get through the NFL draft since the season ended, because I think
Mm.
he's somebody who could actually have standalone value for the Giants if they decide that that's not a position they want to invest to. And it's not really a priority for them with what he showed last year. The thing I love about him the most is at his advanced age, which it is an advanced age for his position. This is a guy who only had 146 total carries as a running back coming into last year. And even last year, he didn't even double that. So he's still pretty fresh, almost like a Raheem Mostert type, to where he's probably going to peak in his late 20s if he's given an opportunity to do so. Him being a converted wide receiver. There's not a ton of talent to go around with this team. We'll see what they do in the draft. But man, they're talk about a team that's on the brink. They're kind of the anti 49ers for me, as to where they need to have people. I don't trust their ability to, even if they draft a running back, even if they draft a wide receiver, I don't trust, they don't have the cachet that some of these other organizations do. So I don't feel as worried about Tracy if they attempt to, I don't know, spell him in some way, just because they're in my personal doghouse.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, nobody really wants to own people in this Giants offense. Malik
Mhm.
Neighbors is a clear outlier, right? I mean, it's just a clear situation of some talent. You take talent over
Yeah.
situation every time. I like Tyrone Tracey, right? But he's not a guy where I'm banking that the talent is just so good that I'm okay with that situation, right? Guys like David Montgomery, who if I'm a contender, if I'm competing, I would much rather get David Montgomery, who goes 2 spots behind Tyrone Tracey at the RB19. I'd
Mhm.
much rather take a chance on a guy like him over Tyrone Tracey, where he's decently expensive for a guy like you said, where you bring up a good point.
Yeah.
Like, who likely is going to have competition added. And when you look at his game log, look, I totally understand that, there was a lot of turnover at the quarterback position. Tyrone Tracy was also playing a little bit banged up towards the end of the season. But
Mhm.
when you look at his fantasy finishes from week 9 on, he only had one RB1 finish. He was the RB11 against the Saints in week 14, where he had 5 receptions for 83 total yards and a touchdown on 10 targets, which is insane, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a heavy workload in the pass game, but I just think Tyrone Tracey is a case of a guy that you drafted last year in probably the 3rd round in rookie drafts. If you
Mhm.
can get a decently high second round pick for him, even heck, maybe if somebody's willing to pay you like a 112 to the 202, I'd be
Oof.
all on board to ship him out, especially because I don't want to be left holding the bag if they bring in a talented running back in this room.
Yeah, I would be, if somebody wanted to give me that, I'd be sending them a Secret Santa gift on top of it, just to make sure that they really hooked it up. There's guys like this that they're fantasy staples, right? They come in for a year when the team has nothing really else to do other than maybe throw it to one other guy. We saw this with Damian Pierce, Devin Singletary, Antonio Gibson, who, I mean, these are guys who, if you squinted really hard, you could see them having future success. But the NFL sees it differently than we do sometimes, and we're kind of wish casting these guys to take on more of the road. I think that he could be productive, but like you said, am I gonna pay up for it? Probably not.
Yeah, and to close it out, I think with Tyrone Tracey, I think again it's an example of sometimes people are jaded where it's like, hey, I hit on this guy. I drafted him in the 3rd round of my rookie draft, and
Yep.
he overperformed. Right,
Mhm.
take your profit and sell. Like it's like the stock market, right? Sometimes you take the profit and you get out, right? Like
Yeah.
especially when if you're investing in those in crypto, right? Where it's like, it's risky, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah.
you take the profits sometimes and you run. And I think that's what I would be doing with Tyrone Tracy. I don't mind, we'll see what happens with this running back room in a couple of months, right? I don't maybe mind rostering him in redraft depending on how
Mhm.
things shake out. But I just currently where it stands today, if I'm doing a startup right now, I'm definitely not buying him at his current price.
Yeah,
But
the Tyrone Tracy tariffs are coming, and they could be coming in just a couple weekends. So, like you said,
yeah.
get out of the market while you can.
Yeah, no, that's a fitting point to what's going on right now in the world, especially the US. But so I guess our first faller that we do want to talk about is going to be
Mhm.
DJ Moore. DJ Moore is going at pick 60 right now. He's a
Mhm.
5th round player. He's moved down 2 spots and wide receiver 20 right now in terms of where he's being selected. 27 years old, but just turned 27 last month. So, by this time next year, he'll just be turning 28. What are your thoughts on DJ Moore? He gets a new offensive coordinator, new head coach, new
Mhm.
system. Are you buying DJ Moore right now at his current cost?
I am, just because I think that he's kind of like the Baker Mayfield of wide receivers, to where this guy can't go 2 years in a row while having the same system, or at least the same support system that a player of his talent and caliber would need to kind of push him up to those wide receiver 1 ranks. And we don't have to relitigate the mess that the Bears were last year, but I think that's a fantastic buy window, especially when you look at his peers and who he's going around. So I think that this, with the hire of Ben Johnson, with Keenan Allen, if he wants to hang on, great, but this is a dynasty play, not a redraft play. Roma Dunze looked like he could be something, but he didn't quite pop like a lot of us hoped that he would. So if you're comparing him to an Xavier Worthy or a Zay Flowers, or he's going, even Chris Olave's down there a little bit, who I do like, but Jordan Addison, talking about wide receiver twos, on maybe wide receiver ones on their team, but never going to be wide receiver ones in fantasy. DJ Moore has that ceiling, and I'm paying up for him if I can.
Yeah, I'd love to disagree with you because maybe it would make for some better content here, but anybody that knows me knows I'm a big fan of DJ Moore. I mean,
Mhm.
to be able to command 140 targets last year in a room that had Keenan Allen and Rome
Yeah.
Odunze in it, you now lose Keenan Allen. That's 121 targets that are now vacated. I'm sure this team might bring in a wide receiver late day 2, maybe
Mhm.
early day 3. They'll probably add to that room in some sort of capacity. I don't know how heavily they will add, but I'm sure they will add. But it's
Mhm.
hard to not get excited about them adding in Ben Johnson, right? And when you look at DJ Moore, this is a guy kind of like you said, where, dude, this guy has had in 2024 140 targets, 136 in 2023,
Mhm.
118 in 2022, 162 in 2021, 118 in 2020, and 135 in 2019. He's had under 118 targets one time, and it was his rookie season. I mean, this is a guy that commands the football no
Mhm.
matter what quarterback is throwing him the football. This is arguably the best situation he's ever had because he's another year with Caleb Williams with probably the
Yeah.
best offensive mind that he's ever been with. So I'm down with it. I think if I had to guess as to why maybe he's moving down slightly, maybe it's because there's a lot of chatter in them Twitter streets that you're always in there. You're in those trenches. And a lot of people are talking about Roma Dunze lately and how he's a really good buy right now. And so maybe that's kind of pushing people down to where maybe people would prefer to pay a little bit of a discount on the second wide receiver in the offense, which would be Roma Dunze.
Yeah, he's suffering from fantasy fatigue, as to where he's been on some putrid offenses, and he's really, while maybe he personally hasn't let people down, the drafting of DJ Moore has let a lot of people down over the last several years. So, if you wanted to tell me that Ben Johnson wants to run the ball like he did in Detroit, which was fifth most in the league per game, and Roma Dunze is going to have a nice long breakout, and Cole Kmet is signed there long term. If you want to tell me that all those are going to hurt DJ Moore, I can disagree with it, but at the end of the day, I just don't buy into the fact that, like, a guy this talented, with a quarterback as talented as Caleb Williams, with an offensive coordinator as talented as Ben Johnson, isn't going to outperform a lot of the guys going around him in Dynasty, which I think are, I hate to say, I don't want to say one trick pony, but they're certainly not. They're limited in a way that he's not.
Sure. Yeah, and I think the fatigue thing is a great point, right? I think James Conner, I think, suffers from that every year. Nobody wants
Every
to
year.
draft
Yeah.
him, but he finds his way into the end zone every single
Mhm.
year,
Mhm.
8 to 10 times.
Yeah.
But good way to close that one out. Our next faller is going to be Tyreek Hill, who's been in the news lately. He's going at the pick 88, down 6 spots in startup drafts right now. And he's currently the wide receiver 37 in startups. He's 31 years old, turns 32 years old the next summer, right? So by the time we are sitting here next year, he's going to be turning 32 and he's getting up there in age. Now, there's been a lot of talk. Is he going to get traded? He had a down year last year. He dealt with some injuries. At this current cost, which you're really looking at a guy that's going, around the 7th to 8th round, are you buying Tyreek Hill? Are you kind of holding him at this moment? I mean, if you're buying him in a startup or are you
Mhm.
selling him in a startup? Let's start there.
I am waiting. I'm selling him, and I'm doing it week 2 of the season. When Tua's healthy, when they're playing in September weather in Miami, and he looks like last year's only reasons his stats dipped were because they played a quarterback who cannot throw the ball for 7 games in Tyler Huntley. No shade on him. Great story. Love when he comes in, but I don't love when I own a wide receiver on that team that he comes in for. So
Sure.
his stats dipped in half last year, despite having only a 20% dip in involvement in the offense. And there's just a lot of there's just too many reasons why that is for me to think that Tyreek can rebound, or is he a buy in Dynasty?
Yeah, there's really nothing that sticks out to me. The one thing I would say with Tyreek Hill is he was 15th per player profiler in air yards last year, right? He had
Yeah.
1,369. So, he was getting those opportunities, but to your point, it just was with bad quarterback play. We talked about how you'll take talent over situation every time, but we're at a tough
Mhm.
spot right now where we're sitting here saying, how talented is Tyreek Hill at this point in his career? I think he's still talented and still can make an impact as long as he's healthy, but
Mhm.
it just seems like his mind is on other things in terms of football wise. He's got something. I mean, feels like something is always going on with
Yeah, a
him.
lot of his body parts are on other things these days.
Yeah,
Not any of them for in a good way.
I would say so. And so there's certain guys that I don't want the headache, and he's
Mhm.
one of them right now. Where look, if you have him in Dynasty, I think you're just holding him at this point in time. Um,
Yeah.
you're probably holding him at this point in time in Dynasty, right? And I
Mhm.
think if you're doing a startup, I think you're probably not drafting him at that point because, like we talked before, I'd rather take Ricky Pearsall around later. Um, Maybe even take a chance on George Pickens, depending on my roster construction, just because
Mhm.
he's younger.
Yeah.
But we don't know with that quarterback situation. But um, yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill is a polarizing player right now, and it makes sense that he's dropping right now in startups with the current news that we've recently just saw come out the last few days.
Yep.
And obviously, there's the whole trade news. People don't like uncertainty. Same with the
Yep.
stock market, right? People
Yeah.
sell their stocks when there's uncertainty. Same thing
Yeah.
with the guys in fantasy football.
Yeah, and the market for him, especially in startups and in drafts, reflects that. Because if you had told anybody last year that Jonnu Smith was going to come in and command 800 yards, and that Devon Achan was going to become basically a full time wide receiver in that offense, while it wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility, he could just come off of 1,700 yards in a Dolphins playoff appearance. So go now. It seems like the market has adjusted on what he can be, and he is what he is, right? You mentioned guys who just are what they are. If you draft James Conner or Derrick Henry or Tyreek Hill in a dynasty startup, you're making a very clear indication because there's only one pathway for these guys, and that's it. You just got to hold them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a good way to close that one out. And we're gonna finish today's episode, which I think has gone pretty well so far. All right, so then we're going to move over to our last guy. It's going to be James Cook. And similar to Tyreek Hill, this is a guy who's also been in the news pretty recently, but not for the same reasons, but also not for good ones either. James Cook is going at pick 52 in startups right now. He's down one spot. He's a fourth round player right now in startups, and he's the RB9. 24 years old, turns 25 before the end of the year, which, if you were listening before, he's actually younger than Tyrone Tracey, but he's been in the league for a few more years. Chuck, what are your thoughts on James Cook, the situation in Buffalo, and are you currently buying him at his current price in startups?
I'm a huge fan of where James Cook is going. I'm not necessarily a James Cook diehard. I think that he's not necessarily an integral part of this Bills offense, but I feel that same way about Kyron Williams, about Kenneth Walker, guys that are going around him, Chase Brown. And the problem with these guys is these are usually the parts in drafts and startups to where you have to decide which way your team's going to go. If you're committing to James Cook, it's usually because you're saying I want an RB2 who can give me RB1 weeks pretty consistently. And I think that the Bills have made a pretty clear indication that they haven't invested hard in wide receiver. They haven't invested any more in tight end. They're rebuilding somewhat on defense. the offensive line is one of the top units in the league. This is where every year you look at it and you go, why didn't I pay up for James Cook before they offered him that contract? Why didn't I pay up for James Cook before he had another RB9 season and slipped through the finger cracks? Like guys like these, you don't love them, but they do produce. He can do it all. They've tried with Ray Davis. They've tried with Ty Johnson. Those are ancillary players. James Cook can actually be a feature complementary back to Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at him last year coming off of an 18 touchdown season, he actually had a down year in receptions. He had 32 receptions last year. In 2023, he had 44, but he was up in
Mm,
yards per carry from 4.7 to 4.9, and he more than doubled his total touchdowns. We're likely going to see a regression in touchdowns, right? I mean, I
mhm.
don't expect James Cook to have 18 touchdowns next year. He was 11th in total points per game per player profiler at 16.7. I prefer to look at points per game when talking about players and trying to get a feel for,
Yeah.
their fantasy finishes because of injuries and everything else. I think it's better to me to look at when they're actually on the field. What are they putting on a points per game basis? So I think we probably see slight regression there. And I also am to your point. I mean, you look at guys going around James Cook. You have Josh Jacobs, who's a pick behind him at RB10. You have Christian McCaffrey at RB11, and you have Kyron Williams ahead of him at RB8 at pick 46, all
Mm,
within a round difference of each other. And then Chase Brown a full round behind him. All
yeah.
these guys have question marks in some sort of way, right? So it's
Mm,
a pretty much a pick your poison. James Cook's on one of the best offenses, and like you said, behind one of the best offensive lines in football. I'm
mhm.
okay taking a chance on James Cook still. I think I'm definitely not selling him completely unless I'm getting a good price. If I can get, a 105 for James Cook and flip that, I would do that, right? Because I would prefer maybe get Trevion Henderson or one of these other rookie running backs
Yes.
high. I would
Yes.
definitely prefer that. But if I'm doing the startup today, I'm still comfortable taking James Cook depending on your roster construction. If
Yeah.
he's your RB2, you can take a little bit more risk with a guy like him. Now, if he's your RB1 in a startup, I probably prefer to go with a guy like Josh Jacobs, who I think has more job security at the
Mhm.
current time with his current situation.
Yeah, that Josh Jacobs is the great here's the other side of that coin to where that offense basically revolves around him and runs through him.
Yeah.
Um, you're not gonna Jonathan Taylor, same thing, Brees Hall, same thing. You're not gonna get that with a James Cook. Now he's gonna be that guy who is always, and this happens every generation. There's a running back that's attached to an unbelievable quarterback who is a fantasy phenom, the quarterback that is, and the running back is able to just kind of ride their wake into a lot of productive points. That's James Cook for this generation potentially. And they, 15 million a year. I don't know. They don't really have the space to do that. And I don't know if, it doesn't certainly meet the qualifications of a player that would pull in that would command that kind of salary. I mean, you're looking at, Jonathan Taylor's making 14 a year, Christian, and then you jump to Christian McCaffrey, 19 a year. If they can convince him to take that hometown discount, you're getting a pretty nice player for the stretch run here.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, and I think there's a good chance that they do bring somebody else in. The latest reports from Ian Rappaport, he said that things aren't great right now, but at least he wouldn't describe it as great. But he said
Mhm.
he thinks he'll play for the Bills next year. He doesn't know how it's going to get done, but he thinks that they can get back together and get some sort of deal done theoretically. But he says it's not going to be anytime soon, which
Yeah.
again makes us think they're probably not going to resolve this by the draft. It gives the team flexibility to say, how does the board fall? Is there a running
Mhm.
back that we love that we scouted that maybe falls to us early day 3 that we're willing to take a chance on?
Yeah.
And then figure out the James Cook thing where it's like, hey, we have leverage. We just drafted this running back that we really like. We happen to like Ray Davis. We like Ty Johnson. While they're complementary pieces, they're
Mm.
still players that were involved in the offense and showed some promise. They brought back Ty Johnson, and Ray Davis looked pretty good in the time that he was given to play last year. So it gives them leverage, but again, to kind of sum it all up, I think I'm comfortable with James Cook if he's your RB2 in a startup. I probably wouldn't prefer him to be my RB1 if I'm drafting a startup. I'd rather go with guys around him like a Kenneth Walker around later,
Yeah.
or even, a Josh Jacobs who's going just a pick behind him. But I think that really circles things up. This was a good show. I think we're going to continue this. We'll probably kick off another. best ball or dynasty for next week's show.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments what you guys think. But that's it for me and Chuck, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.